Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this cold Thursday morning in December. It's funny, I was teasing one of my colleagues who said she was waiting for the cold, wet weather to come. And thanks a lot, Jasmine, because it has hit us. But we are really excited about today's discussion, especially as we enter the holiday season. This is the final ABNYTalks in our series for 2023, New York City's Rebounding International Tourism, which is a conversation that I'm really eager to hear from these experts about, because as an organization that's a champion for the city of New York, we know how important tourism is to the city. But understanding the nuances of the different sectors of tourism, and particularly what we're going to talk about today, international tourism, I think is something that we can all work together. And hopefully we'll have some suggestions how you can help us advocate for more funding, but also make sure that we bring international tourism back to the city. As we draw the curtain, appropriate, we're in a theater, to 2023, we are privileged to host this panel discussion today with these key leaders here of New York City tourism industry. And as, like I said, we approach the holiday season, this conversation couldn't be timelier. Our esteemed panelists representing the city's entertainment, airports, and hospitality sectors will share their insights on how they are facilitating the resurgence of New York City's international tourism. While celebrating the resounding return to New York City's tourism, we know that we need to focus on the international aspect of it. Today's panelists will unravel the intricate tapestry of trends and challenges that we're seeing that really define our efforts in attracting and accommodating these international tourists. Reflecting on 2022, New York City welcomed a staggering 56.7 million visitors, marking a significant stride towards recovery, really encompassing approximately 85% of the city's pre-pandemic recovery in our visitation, particularly in 2019. These visitors weren't just passing through, right? Weren't just passing through our city. They generated a remarkable $68.1 billion in economic impact for our city, contributed $6.2 billion in local tax revenue, and supported a staggering 344,000 jobs across our vibrant 5 boroughs of this city. As we approach the close to this year in 2023, the forecast anticipates an even more promising outlook, with an expected 59.6 million visitors, including 48.8 million domestic and 10.8 million international guests. Looking ahead, New York City Tourism and Conventions, you'll hear from them today, formerly known as NYC and Company, projects a remarkable over 63 million visitors in 2024, really underlining the positive trajectory of our city's tourism economy. But international tourism is still lagging. The significance of international markets cannot be overstated. They typically constitute 20% of our total visitation, but really contribute to 50% of the spending in hotel rooms and other amenities. The impact of international travelers extend beyond the immediate economic boosts. They really set trends and often guide domestic travel and patterns. And sometimes we miss the importance of international tourism because it's not just merely financial, right? It's a vital force for New York City, contributing to our economy, our cultural diversity, and our global reputation. The impact is felt across various sectors, from accommodations and dining to shopping, entertainment, and other attractions. Moreover, it fuels jobs, right? We want to make sure that our economy is strong, and it really fuels enhancing employment opportunities in hospitality, retail, transportation, and many, many, many different sectors. So really, by hosting these international tourists, we're not only promoting the city on a global scale, but also creating positive ambassadors. right? We want people to speak about all the things that make New York City great, make New York City unique, and quite frankly, spectacular, because we know New York City's spectacular, right? Right? But really, satisfied international tourists become storytellers, right? They share their stories, their positive experiences with families, with friends, really fostering increased tourism over time. And additionally, international tourism can spur investments in infrastructure, right? We're going to hear from the Port Authority's perspective, all the money that went into New York City's airports and other types of infrastructure improvements, enhancing transportation and accommodations, right? When we drive this energy here, it also gives us the basis to make these really important investments that not only benefit the travelers and the visitors, but also New Yorkers. So in essence, international tourism is a vital component to New York City's economy, really enriching the global appeal and maintaining our status as one of the world's premier destinations for tourists. So to dive deeper into the intricacies of this subject and to guide us through today's panel discussion, we are honored to have Fred Dixon here, the president and CEO of New York City Tourism and Conventions. A round of applause for Fred. Fred has really been at the forefront of New York City's tourism resurgence, really demonstrating an unparalleled commitment to not only the city, but his leadership has really been unmatched. Since joining in 2005, he has navigated the city through various challenges, right, in various times, overseeing the development and execution of New York City's tourism and event strategy. Under Fred's guidance, New York City witnessed a record 66.6 million visitors in 2019, generating a staggering $72 billion in economic impact and creating almost 400,000 jobs. His global network of 17 outposts. I mean, actually, I think I would like his job. I mean, he gets to travel around the world talking about the greatest city. But under his leadership, his global network of 17 outposts doubled international visitation to more than 13.5 million visitors. And that is really remarkable. And in response to the challenges posed by COVID-19, Fred organized the Coalition for NYC Hospitality and Tourism Recovery, really leading the city in his publication of the All in NYC, which was a roadmap for tourism, reimagining the city's recovery in 2020. And the city believed in that report so much, it invested $30 million to make sure that it fulfilled its promise. Fred Dixon's dedication really extends beyond this role. And it's really been evident in his positions in various travel associations and affiliations. He is a true champion for New York City, and his tireless efforts have not only promoted our city globally, but have positioned him as a trusted friend and partner of ABNY. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me as we welcome Fred Dixon and expressing our gratitude for his unwavering commitment to the vibrancy and resiliency of our beloved New York City. Fred?
Right. Wow, that was quite the introduction. Really, can you hear me? There we are. Good morning, everyone. You need to come work with us, Melva. You got all of those points like perfect. Welcome. Thank you all for coming out. This is one of our favorite topics, international tourism. Melva talked about why it's so important. It takes the spending of 4 domestic visitors to equal the spending of 1 international. And as we often say, it's the international travelers that are setting the trends. They're the ones that are leading travel into the boroughs, into the neighborhoods, for domestic travelers to follow. They're the highest users of public transit. They're good for the city, and they're great for our future. So I'm honored today to moderate this panel of experts. I want to thank all of them for coming out this morning. And I would like to do some quick introductions. Immediately to my left is a dear friend and an expert in the field of theater. This actually is one of her organization's venues. Allison French is the Senior Director of Broadway Inbound, the division of the Schubert organization responsible for the wholesale ticketing of live entertainment in New York City. As part of her position, she directs the Broadway Collection Marketing Program, a global marketing and PR program that promotes a core group of shows to visitors in key tourism markets. So before this program really existed, it was difficult for Broadway to extend their reach overseas. And so these shows have invested, they put together a terrific framework to make that happen. And we partner with them in many ways to bring Broadway as a hallmark of New York around the world to invite visitors in. She currently serves as the chair of the Student and Youth Travel Association Youth Foundation, which provides resources for students and youth to participate in transformational travel experiences. And she's going to be helping us host the CIDA annual convention in August. We're going to be thrilled to welcome them back. Interesting to note, New York remains the #1 most popular destination for student and youth travel in North America. That's something we take very seriously. It's not Washington, D.C., it is New York. Or Orlando, right? Good point. Exactly. She's a longtime member of our organization, has been with us in the trenches forever, and incredibly active on the international front. And I'm grateful to have Allison's perspective here. So thank you for being here. Next up is someone who probably doesn't need much of an introduction. Licia Eve is a partner at iCore Strategies, a New York-based management consulting firm founded by her brother, Eric, that is now the largest Black-owned professional services firm in the nation. Incredible. With a presence in more than 70 cities across the country, iCore uses a combination of in-depth analytics and research, risk management, strategic communications, and meaningful community engagement to help iCore's corporate and government clients succeed with mission-critical initiatives while building real and lasting trust. Now, she's done a lot in her career. And before joining iCore last year, she served as a senior executive at Verizon, where she drove the deployment of 5G in the New York metropolitan area and oversaw public policy, government affairs, and philanthropic matters in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. And prior to Verizon, joining them in July of 2013, she served as the Deputy Secretary for Economic Development for New York State. And as such, was the Chief Economic Development Advisor to New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, overseeing 11 state agencies and billions in public-private capital investment. And that's where we've intersected with her most. She also previously served as Judiciary Counsel to then Senator Joe Biden, as well as Counsel and Homeland Security Advisor to then Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton. So quite a vast array of experiences. And in today's context, most importantly, Licia serves as a commissioner of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, including serving as chair of the Security Committee, member of the Board of Directors of Educational Housing Services, and chair of the Board of Directors of Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center. Welcome. Yes, absolutely. Also, someone who doesn't need much of an introduction is our friend Vijay Dandapani. Vijay is a hotel industry veteran who co-founded Apple Core Hotels, an owner-operator of boutique hotels here in Manhattan in 1993, and was president of that company until December of 2016. He was at that time appointed president and chief executive officer of the Hotel Association of New York City in January of 2017. And that's where we work most closely with Vijay. He was a member of our organization before and a great ally. In 1998, he was recognized by Crain's New York Business as one of the top 100 minority business leaders in New York City. In 2002, the Asian American Business Development Center, New York, selected him as one of the 50 outstanding Asian Americans in business. He's written in a number of industry publications in the mainstream media on topics affecting the hotel industry. As a part of New York's response to the COVID crisis, Vijay was instrumental in helping our city manage its way through this crisis and continues to play a vital role in our city's recovery from the pandemic. So Vijay, thank you for being here. And last but certainly not least is our travel industry veteran from the buying side. So what is the perspective of the tour operators, the wholesalers out in the world? How do they think about New York from an international perspective as it relates to selling our destination? And we're so honored to have Peter Van Berkel with us. Peter is the president of Travalco USA Inc., which is based in South Florida. So he put on his winter coat and he came north to be with us. We not only is Peter an important customer of many of us in the room in the city, but he also happens to be the current chair of the International Inbound Travel Association. So that's the Association of Receptive Tour Operators and Inbound Wholesalers. And he is now in his second term, I believe, right, Peter, as the chair. But after his studies in the Netherlands as a young man, he joined Travalco and the company, and Travalco has been owned and operated with the same partner since its inception in 1985. In 2018, Peter received the IITA Travel Professional of the Year Award. In 2023, he was appointed to the Travel and Tourism Advisory Board of the federal government, which advises the U.S. Commerce Secretary Raimondo on travel industry matters. So Peter brings a wide range of experience. As I mentioned, Travalco is a full-range B2B inbound tour operator for North America with very high standards and select distribution methods, as well as innovative product and high-end technical tools to support these standards. Its clientele consists of tour operators and travel professionals from around the world looking to buy North American and U.S. product in particular, in addition to a curated portfolio of accommodations all over the USA, including a robust portfolio here in New York. The company also operates the largest selection of self-drive programs. So that's fly-in, rent a car, and drive yourself. Very popular with Europeans in particular, with more than 150 distinct products for the North American market. In addition to offering a large number of seat and escorted tour programs, so you also can buy into a group that's traveling by motor coach or traveling by group in multiple languages. Travalco also operates a group tour series and fully customized ad hoc group programs. So he's full service in that sense of the products he offers to travelers. And the company has been around for more than 37 years. And in 2017, Travalco was selected and awarded Best DMC Worldwide by the Belgian Travel Trade. So, Peter, thank you for coming up and being with us today. I'm always appreciative of his perspective. And he has a newsletter at IITA that I find incredibly valuable. And if you're not a member of IITA and you're thinking about being active in this space, I encourage you to talk to Peter about the association and get on that mailing list to receive that newsletter. It's very, very well done. So let's dig in. First of all, I'm going to, in addition to thanking everyone for being here, Melva talked about the statistics and the importance. To put it in round numbers, we're roughly 93% recovered this year. We'll think we'll be about 97% recovered next year in terms of overall travel. But the two of the areas that lag the most are business travel, right? When we know all the challenges that the business travel sector is facing in terms of corporate cuts and what have you, work from home. But international remains challenged to a degree. So in 2023, we were about 80% recovered. In 2024, we expect to be 92% recovered, but it's going to be 2025 before we get back, we think, fully to recovery for the international markets. And there's a number of factors behind that. So we're going to dig into those. We're going to talk a little bit about the challenges. We're also going to talk about the opportunities and what trends are we seeing and how is business coming back differently. So I'm just going to start with you, Allison. From Broadway's perspective, I know tourism is so important, and the work that you all have done at Broadway Inbound has made it easier for international tour operators to buy a ticket. In the past, you had to wait till you got here. You had to. Sometimes people were going to the red steps.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
They still do.
They still do. But talk about what, the international market from your perspective at this stage.
At this stage, I would say where we are missing the travelers is the long haul travelers that would come in and stay for longer, spend more, maybe go see more than one show. And so we're keeping a close eye on markets that were really strong for us prior to the pandemic, like China, Australia, New Zealand, although there's a lot of activity going on in those markets. So while we're not quite seeing the numbers that we saw before, when we have meetings with those operators, they're reconnecting their direct connections to us. They're offering the ticketing again. They're offering the products again. And so the demand is there. And so we know it's coming back. It's just a matter of waiting for it to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Licia, from an airport perspective, a lot has happened since the pandemic. How are we doing with our airports, and what are you seeing traffic-wise?
Well, first of all, it's an honor to be here, and I just have to give a shout out to the esteemed executive director of this organization, Melva. She has been extraordinary. I've been honored to have known her for so many years, and it's Abney's loss, but she's always going to be a member of the family, and I'm so excited about what she's going to do next. As extraordinary as your career has been, I know the best is yet to come. So congratulations in terms of what lies ahead. And but to answer your question, after shout out to our dear friend and leader, this is the most extraordinary time in the more than 100-year history of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. Full stop. It has been an extraordinary honor and privilege to have been a commissioner now for 7.5 years. We have a $37 billion 10-year capital budget. We are spending 30 billion of that on our regional airports. And, you know, I deal with the numbers all the time. I used to be vice chair of the finance committee when we were at our most challenging time in 2020, when the air traffic passenger load at its lowest level was 3%. 3%. And we don't get government revenues. It comes from people traveling. That's how we are able to support 7,000 employees who do extraordinary work each and every day to keep all of us safe at all our facilities and to make these development projects happen. But I had to look back at the numbers again. 8 billion at LaGuardia, brand new Terminal B and C. My former boss, the now president of the United States, we all know what he said when he came through with my other former boss, Andrew Cuomo, talked about, you know, how horrible LaGuardia was. Last year, earlier this year, it won the award for the best new airport, not in the country, but in the world. The best new airport in the world. New Terminal B, new Terminal C. I got to be careful about not talking about too many different airlines, but I know my friend from Delta's in the house. So, you know, Terminal B, so many beautiful things. Terminal C, I was just in there the other day. JFK, $19 billion. $19 billion. And just to very briefly indicate, you know, the numbers in terms of what lies ahead. So Terminal 8, completed 2022, the redevelopment, 400 million. Terminal 4 will be completed, the redevelopment in 2024, 1.3 billion. Terminal 6, a new JetBlue terminal, phases in 2026 and 2028 in terms of completion, 4.2 billion. And last, but certainly not least, and most appropriate for this conversation, the brand new Terminal 1, which will be a combination of the space that previously had Terminal 1, Terminal 2, Terminal 3. It will be the world's finest international terminal. The size of it, 23 gates. It will be nearly the size of both the new LaGuardia terminals combined, and at a project cost of $9 billion. Melva said at the very beginning, in terms of, you know, visitors from around the world and down the street coming to visit us, the first time they step off that plane on U.S. soil, they're stepping in an airport. And now, many of you who've been traveling, it's exciting to travel again. It's exciting to be at our airports. I'm now stopping at a lounge when I get off the plane at LaGuardia or JFK, having a meal, having a beverage before I go back home. So it's an exciting time. The travel numbers, I know we'll talk about that more, they have exploded. Transatlantic travel is higher than it now has ever been. Trans-Pacific travel is still down, but it's making its way back. And so the days have been bright, but they're going to be even brighter ahead. And they're around the corner. They're not in the distant future.
We love your leadership and your style and your passion.
Yeah.
Thank you for all of that. And it's never been, for me, a prouder moment as a New Yorker than to land at LaGuardia. I mean, that is the most beautiful experience. Congrats to everybody involved in that beautiful airport. VJ, you also have been through an incredibly challenging time. I would dare say the hotels have never been challenged like they have been the last 4 years, but things are coming back and rates are strong, but there are still, I know, a lot of weaknesses out there and challenges still ahead of us. What's the state of play from an international perspective for you right now?
Well, thanks, Fred. And again, I'd like to give a shout out to Melba. I was frankly quite shocked to hear that she is leaving. I think she's been an amazing leader. First met her during COVID, actually, and it was really a pleasure to work with her. So I think ABNY's lost, but her gain for sure. So the industry has had tremendous challenges. I mean, during COVID, our occupancy dropped to the 30s, if you will. But really, if I can take a step back, the industry is a tale of two cities, if you will, two very dichotomous aspects. So if you're a current operating hotel owner or just an operator, you're doing really well. Say, take the luxury market in the fourth quarter last year, was up 20% compared to 2019. We all peg ourselves to 2019, right? Because that's the last good year, if you will, even though 2018 was a better year for the hotel industry. So today we have the odd situation of 15,000 rooms catering to a crisis that we have. So what does that do for the industry? It really causes amazing compression. And so therefore, if you're a current owner operator, like I said, then things couldn't be better. So imagine this theater right now. If we took out 20% of these seats, this look a lot more full, right? I mean, so not that it isn't right now. So it's a sort of a misleading perspective, if you will, from the state of play. What we really are fearful of, although we are certainly optimistic, is that when these rooms become available again, what is it going to do to occupancy and rate? Of course, with leadership from Fred and the international arrivals keep coming, and certainly the airport's upkeep. You didn't mention Newark. Is Newark also your?
Oh, absolutely. Focus on New York, but $4 billion at Newark, brand new Terminal A.
Yeah,
off the chain.
Yeah,
amazing.
Terminal A is fantastic, and in parts of Terminal C, which I use. I'm a United guy. No offense, Pat, to downtown. So, but it's great. But anyway, coming back to the hotel industry, I think we in policy-wise, if I may jump a little ahead, Fred, we tend to shoot ourselves in the foot. And what do I mean by that? In 2010, we passed the illegal hotels law. Basically, it was directed at cutting out short-term rentals that were illegal. The multiple dwelling law in the city does not allow for you to do transient rooms in a house for a variety of reasons. So, but we threw the baby out of the bathwater. With that, we threw out youth hostels as well. So meaning that it's illegal to have youth hostels. So we talk about affordable housing, but we need affordable tourism as well. Clearly, if you look at the average spend of an international arrival tourist, I mean, you might know them, you will know the number better than I do, Fred, but I believe it's under $2,000. And as you mentioned earlier, they take the subways, they take the public transport. So they're very cost conscious. We don't have youth hostels that can be built. It's a really terrible policy that we enacted back in 2010, and it still remains on our books. We compete with Paris, France, London, UK, Milan, and coming to the US itself. Chicago has youth hostels, Boston has youth hostels, but we don't. So you're cutting out these people who would otherwise come on a shoestring budget. And, Peter can talk more about it since he deals with inbound, and they don't have a place to go. I mean, so guess where they used to stay? In Airbnbs or Booking.com, short-term rental places, which didn't do us any good. We were not getting tax revenue from that. And, the corollary effects of it were so big because employees were really not accountable. They didn't have the employee payroll taxes that we have in the hotel industry. So it's a range of issues. So I'll stop here because I know you got some of these issues that you want to bring up later on, but the industry is really looking good if you're a current owner operator.
Thank you, Vijay. No, it's so important. And it's been clear that we've been underserved from a youth perspective. In particular, accessibility is key. And we can't compete with other cities in that way. We look at travel as a lifetime of journey. We know once you come to New York, you are very likely to return again. So we want to get you in as a young person, make sure you have access to this destination, and then you'll come back over the rest of your lifetime. So it's critical. Speaking of demand, one of the ways we're going to keep the hotels full and the theaters full and the airports busy is driving demand from overseas. And Peter, you have the best, I think, insight as that relates to New York City. Talk about what you're seeing for the market. How are we doing as a destination, and your perspective from the TTAB as it relates to federal policies like visa wait times.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. Although I'm not a New Yorker, I'm from one of the many sixth boroughs. Miami. So no, and it is important the way that we look at it as a company, but also as an association. Of course, we understand very well that we're talking about New York here, but you cannot see that in isolation. Because New York is a huge magnet for the United States, and the best business, as indicated already, is the repeat business. And you get them young at youth hostels, you get them in many different ways. So we have to make sure that we do that. So that is basically the perspective that I would like to give here as well. Well, we all know there is no such thing as the international markets. There are many, many different markets, and there are many cities with many tails. It's not over. And to give you a good indication, traditional markets from Germany, for example, traditionally booking, recovering very, very well. Are coming back to a higher level than initially expected. Completely on the flip side, you see, for example, the China market. China because of many different reasons, including extended COVID restrictions that they had over there, an enormous reduction in air capacity, which results in unbelievably high prices. It is unaffordable at this moment for people from China, for the average visitor to come to the US. You hear, depending on the time of the year, and that's improving because there are more flights coming back. But this past year, we were talking about economy fares of more than $3,000 or $3,500, and depending on the time of the year. So that is an issue. Airfare is something that is very important to keep in mind because many of the international carriers that were serving Asia, and American carriers as well, redeployed, of course, to other destinations. As a result of the pandemic, after the domestic boom that we had, and a little bit the sugar high of domestic travel, everybody went to the national parks 2 years ago, and now everybody is in Venice, Greece, or in other cities in Paris. Keep in mind that what we hear from our international clients, for Europeans coming to the US, is saying, yes, there is an enormous amount of capacity, but that is serving for a large part US travelers going to Europe. And they're setting the rates. So what we're seeing in the early booking phases where we are now, because a traditional market like Germany, for example, or the UK or the Netherlands, Scandinavia, we have seen, and some of our clients have already booked 30% of their total 2024 volume. They are typically catering to those people who book 6-8 months ahead. They are talking about that the fares that they're seeing from Europe to the US are 400-500 euros higher than they were last year. That is the result of the anticipation that many Americans will go to Greece. So, and that is the bigger issue. And of course, everybody wants to optimize, whether you're a hotel, an airline, a car rental company, that is obvious. However, if we don't realize that these international visitors will make up their minds because they will, for a lot of practical reasons and historical reasons, decide already where they're going to go. And that does not mean that they're not interested in the US. There's an enormous interest in the US, but that does not mean at any price. And what starts happening if the impulse of buying is not there at an early stage with an, let's call it, a reasonable price, let's not go too much in detail about what is a reasonable price, then they will say, well, US, yes, certainly interested, but maybe not this year. And this year, we're going to another long-haul destination. And for European clients, that could be the Far East, it could be Africa, etc., etc. So we have to be very careful as a destination, as a country, not as a city, but as a country, that we keep our prices as reasonable as possible. Because if you want to take rate action, what you see quite often with hotels, you can do that. But if you have missed already half of the market, yeah, then you're chasing down basically the revenue to the drain, and you have to discount much more than you would have had if you would say, okay, straddle your bets. It is not an everything on red or everything on black. You hedge your bets, and that is sometimes difficult in both the airline industry as well as in the hotel industry. There is that expression, FOBO, the fear of the better opportunity. Yeah, but the trick here is actually what I don't understand. I see that's very pragmatic and very logistical. Why don't people hedge their bets? Why does it have to be all or nothing? Do everything at the same time and keep adjusting as you go along. And if you do that, in the end, I believe that everybody comes ahead much further than they are at this moment. So pricing is a challenge at this moment, but many markets are definitely coming back.
That's good to hear. And talk about the hotel prices in particular. I know because we see the recovery, and Vijay touched on it, and we know airfare prices are high. New York is competitive with lots of other destinations, right? So up and down the East Coast, we compete with LA, San Francisco, but also internationally. How are we positioned in that way? And what's the perception of New York from an expense standpoint at this moment?
New York is unique. No, because of but I can say that because I'm an outsider in that sense. No, but
we think we are.
No, you are. you are, and you got so much going for clients. Cannot be cubbyholed anymore. Everybody wants their own personal experience, so you need diversity. Diversity in the broadest sense of the word, of attraction, of people, of concepts, of ideas, of imagination. And that is what the city has to offer. And whether it's sports or it is theater, and it's not only theater, it's not only hotels. No, it is that unique combination. And that makes us very, very competitive as a destination. There is no destination in the world that can compete with the diversity of experiences that the United States has to offer, of which New York is a major, major component. So we have to play to that. Now, you were asking about TTAP, the advisory committee to the Commerce Secretary, and she gave a remit about what can we do as a Commerce Department to make things move in a proper way. Well, we're talking about sustainability, and sustainability. Not only greening, no, sustainability in the broadest sense of the word. We have, in some areas, we saw that during the pandemic, we had already some over-tourism because every destination has its limitations and there's a capacity link. There are quite some logistical tricks that you can play to increase capacity without degrading the quality of the product, spreading the joy time-wise, etc., etc. Tour companies are very, very interested in doing that, and a very good vehicle on that. There is a true interest in sustainability, and that goes from very obvious things like EV charging stations in national parks, which is a huge challenge because of location, but they're working on that. But the most important is how can we make sure that the destinations deliver that unique experience in such a way that all the stakeholders, and very important, the local population as well, are part of that. It is not only environmental, and it is not only about the experience of the traveler itself. It is the destination itself which has to have the buy-in, because the more buy-in you have from the local destination, the more capacity you're creating. And so those are the kind of programs that they're working on.
Yeah, it's very critical. And it's worth noting, I think visa wait times are improving. In fact, there are more U.S. visa holders today in the world than ever in history. So, which is a terrific bit of information. And so I thank Peter for his leadership and his work on the TTAP for sure. It's great to have your perspective. I know we want to leave some time for questions. So let's do a sort of a quick rapid round of what do you think the two biggest challenges and the two biggest opportunities are, Vijay, in the year ahead?
Well, the biggest challenge we have is pricing. I mean, as I already said, the hotel prices are way too high, and then the budget of an international traveler, even though it's 4 times the spend, they balk at the fact that hotel prices are so high. So meeting planners actually view, I mean, certainly I'm sure you got data on that, but we ourselves commissioned a survey on it, and it said it's at the bottom while desirability is at the top. So it's hard to bridge that. The other challenge is the perception of safety. I mean, it's a perception, but perception's reality, as we say. I mean, I certainly live and walk about the city. It's been a 33-year since I've moved to the city, and I think it's safe, but the perception's not there.
Yeah. And opportunities.
Well, opportunities, I think, as I already said, the youth hostel, we need to get off the affordable market. It's a big, big market. Accor, which I don't know if Accor is out here, they're already in that space. I'm willing to say, I think Michael's here from Wyndham. The hotel brands will get into this space because it's an opportunity. You're going to get money out of it. It's a different model, but it's tourism. It's hospitality nevertheless.
And how bullish are you on China?
On China, I think China is going to open up. I mean, I'm very bullish on China. I think this is not something that's going to endure. So.
Yeah, I think you're right. Lisa, you talked about the Trans-Pacific travel is coming back. Any thoughts or insights there? And what do you think the big opportunities are going to be next year?
Yeah, well, it relates to one of the challenges. I mean, there's so many opportunities. And again, I just have to give a tremendous shout out to the leadership of Rick Cotton, the executive director of the Port Authority, the 7,000 employees who work there. They're just they are the ones that made this happen. As a commissioner, I just play a role of oversight. But I would say the one challenge that is very specific as it relates to air travel is the fact that we have an extreme shortage in air traffic controllers. What does that mean? Well, February of this year, the staffing levels of airport air traffic controllers per the FAA was at 53%. So, very long story short, and the members of the airline industry are familiar with this fact, the airlines have, in effect, had to reduce, per the direction of the FAA, their passenger seats by about 10%. What does that mean? And that process is going to be in place and through October 2024. We are all hopeful that the FAA will staff up significantly. Please encourage the FAA to do that so that the airlines can, get rid of that 10% reduction. But what does that mean? That means between this October that just passed and this coming March 2024, that's 3 million passenger seats reduction. Because we don't have enough air traffic controllers. I would say that's really the only challenge from an aviation perspective, wearing my commissioner hat. As chair of the security committee, we spend obviously a lot of time focused on protecting our assets from a cyber and physical space. Opportunities, really briefly on the value front. I didn't mention it, but we have visionary plans together for a brand new bus terminal. We've already made millions of investments in the path, which is critically important for New Jersey residents or people who are traveling to New York from Newark, 9-car trains. And you mentioned diversity. It doesn't relate to aviation travel specifically, but very proud that the LaGuardia project had $2 billion in MWBE contracts. And with respect to all of our airports, Newark, JFK, and LaGuardia, and Teterboro, there's a significant focus on local and diverse hiring. So the opportunities are literally limitless. But I would say from an aviation standpoint, we need more air traffic controllers so that the airlines can increase their seats by 10%. And the sooner we do that, the better.
Such great perspective. And it's always interesting to know, Atlanta gets a lot of attention as the world's busiest airport. But if you look at our system, the airports that you, the commissioners, and Rick oversee, it is the largest air system in the world.
Absolutely.
And we're going to tout that.
Oh, yeah. It's
Take that, Atlanta.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's remarkable the work that you all do, and the complexities of what the Port Authority manages is remarkable. And the Gateway Project, we didn't touch on that, but that is obviously a huge piece of the strategic vision and future for our city. And then Broadway. I mean, it's certainly been a challenging time for Broadway as well. Things are bouncing back. You've got an exciting season coming up. Are people buying the way they did before? What are your thoughts on opportunities and challenges?
Sure. I think for Broadway overall, the industry is very strong, but it's unbalanced right now. And there is a problem with pricing perception. People think the prices are all very high, but when you dig into it and you look at the grosses, the Broadway League reports grosses for every Broadway show every week. Last week, 12 shows grossed over $1 million, 2 shows grossed over $2 million, but we have 41 Broadway theaters. So if everybody coming to New York only wants to buy The Lion King, that's going to drive their prices up. And there are so many other shows that people can see. So I think the problem right now is that there's a perception of really high pricing, but that's being driven by a few very big brand name shows that people are flocking to at the moment because of what I was saying earlier. They might not go see 2 shows while they're here. They might be limiting it to 1. So when you think about Broadway overall, it's every show is its own small business. So it's every small business competing almost with the other small businesses on Broadway. So I think that's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity because we have a lot of capacity to fill. So we just need to challenge people to get to a theater they might not have heard of before. Come see a show here. There's a lot of different opportunities out there for Broadway. And while shows like The Lion King and Wicked are driving a lot of that volume and a lot of that gross that we see, it's not the only thing there, but it is something where we are able to use it as that rising tide that's lifting all boats.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's always amazing to me that the people don't know that there's usually a $59 or a $79 ticket in the balcony in the mezz.
Yeah.
And so, yes, you can pay $400 for a ticket if you'd like to. You also can pay $59 or $79, and you can sit in the balcony and have just as good an experience. So that is an important message I think we always need to drive, and we're always trying to encourage travelers to buy in advance. We love the red steps. You can go to TKTS if you don't have anything to do on a rainy afternoon, but we want you to buy in advance because those small businesses need that money up front. They need that assurity that they know that they're going to sell those tickets. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's something where if you're looking at your itinerary for New York and you're including a Broadway show, pick the one that you really want to see and book it and commit to it. And if you're willing to just take the option for whatever they have at the last minute, that can be great if you're open to exploring something you might not have heard of before. But if you're spending the money to bring your family to go see a Broadway show, it can get pricey. So definitely commit to it ahead of time, and you're going to get better seats that way. You'll usually get a better price that way too.
What are the top 3 international markets for Broadway?
Right now, I would say it's Canada, it is the UK, and we're seeing really strong numbers from France right now as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
We hear that from the museums too. And what about language? I know language sometimes is a barrier for travelers if English isn't completely
Right.
a comfortable space for them. But you have new services available for folks.
Yeah, there are the same services that are used for accessibility in the theaters. Can be used for languages, for language translations. I will tell you, though, that while some of the shows offer it, it's not used very much. And I think that that is a problem because not many people know it's available, but also a lot of times it can sort of distract that experience. And when people go to the show, they might not need it, really. They're immersed in the show that they're going to see. If you think about going to something like, for me personally, I think about going to the Metropolitan Opera. Sometimes I'll read the subtitles that are on the chair in front of me, but usually I know what's going on. Like, you can figure it out. So I think it's a great tool and it's a great marketing tool, but it's not something that is something that people have adopted that much, but it's great for opening their options for shows they might not have been drawn to.
Taking down those barriers one at a time.
Yeah.
Let's turn to the audience for questions. We've got it's about 5 till 10. We're going to go a little bit over if there are lots of questions, but I know there's some folks going to be roaming in the audience. Who wants to go first? DeWitt from Skift.
Okay.
She's coming. She's coming here.
Oh, great. Great panel. So I guess the question, I'm from Skift. My question would be, with the whole short-term rental crackdown happening in New York, has that at all made the city, I guess, impacted demand or influenced pricing in New York City at all, I guess?
Short answer, not yet. I'll tell you why. Because the law came into effect beginning of this year, but it actually took effect in terms of operations from September 5th. It's too recent for any of that data to come out to say that, actually move prices. Prices, as we all know, the fourth quarter, it moves up anyway. So we have this misleading notion that's actually being pushed by Airbnb that prices have gone up because you banned us. What has gone out from the system, if you go to the Airbnb listings, they've dropped 85% for the month of October, 85%, mind you. So keep in mind that during COVID, these guys benefited the most from the fact that hotels were closed due to the misleading perception that they were safer. We in the hotel industry put in HEPA filters, put in a range of sanitation stations, things that would be becoming of an ICU operation, if you will, in a hospital. But on the other hand, they felt that customers felt that, you were safer in one of these places. So they benefited hugely. And despite what Airbnb says that this is one of their smaller markets, it isn't. Otherwise, why would they fight this tooth and nail legally everywhere? But long answer to your question is, it has not yet affected it. Will it affect it in the future? The pricing rise that you see is more because of what I already said, which is the compression caused by hotels catering 15,000 rooms to migrants. And the fact that I didn't mention one other thing. We eventually, Fred and his team are going to bring in more international tourists to the city, and we're actually going to be short of hotel rooms. Why? Because we've come up with this thing called a citywide special permit that says you need a special permit to build a hotel. That's a long, drawn-out, extenuating process that you'd sooner go to a multiple root canals for a dentist than go through this, all right? So, but that's a reality. And not a single permit has been pulled except for the Little Nell in Rock Center, which is a long way from happening because it's too arduous, too long. And by the time you get your construction financing together, it's going to be too late when your permit comes up. So there's opportunity over there. But short-term rentals, we were really violating. It was illegal. I mean, you're not allowed to have a theater in your house, are you? On a public basis, you're not allowed to have a restaurant in your home. So this nonsense that you are suddenly allowed to do this just because you are getting by the law because nobody's enforcing it, it was not a right. So.
Can I comment on that? And so VJ's the expert. I will say, as someone, so I don't represent anybody in that industry, but I do think about the study that just came out recently by the New York Times. Just New York Times talked about a couple of days ago that talked about, so many New Yorkers who kept the city running, who didn't have the luxury of leaving, like a lot of millionaires did. The millionaires are coming back to the city, and more New Yorkers, low and moderate income New Yorkers, are leaving because they can't afford to stay here. So I do think about short-term rentals as a means, at least for some of them, to keep their homes. I mean, this is hot off the press. I leave it to the experts to figure out the details of that. But I also think, individual New Yorkers opening up their homes across all the 5 boroughs of the city is a way to add that, that greater, more, rich, diverse experience. So.
The law doesn't ban that. You can bring in people from outside as long as you're in your apartment. You just can't make it into a hotel. That's all. If you have a home and you want to bring in, I mean, that was the real purpose of this right from the beginning, right? We all brought in international students who used to come here and get homestays and au pairs. They all came through that system. So the law explicitly does not ban that. What it bans is a de facto hotel that's being kept.
Yeah, good points on both sides. Yes, ma'am. And, oh, sorry. Yeah, in the back.
I'll get to you. Just give me a second.
Just coming around. Who's been to New World Stages before? It's a cool space, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, good morning. I'm Jackie with Amadeus, and a couple questions. First and foremost, regarding VJ, you mentioned hospitality is a tale of 2 cities here in the city. I know some hotels are still closed. Do we anticipate, the growth and all inventory online and available by 2025?
You mean like how many of them will reopen?
Correct. Some hotels.
Well, some will never reopen. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. Who are you with, Amanda?
Jackie with
Jackie,
Amadeus.
sorry, Jackie. Yes, some will never reopen because we have, firstly, there's a capital stack issue, meaning that how they got their financing was predicated on pre-COVID numbers. And so you had unsustainable levels of financing, and so therefore they will not reopen. They also have something called Local Law 97, which is a reduction of carbon footprint that takes place from this coming year, and by 2030 you have to reduce 40% of your carbon footprint. So that's going to preclude some of these legacy hotels. I use that word advisedly. I mean, these are really old places, if you will. That's going to be hard to retrofit, and so they will not reopen. But I mentioned the citywide special permit that took effect this year. Many projects got off the ground before that permit took effect. So that inventory pipeline is still coming up. I think there are 2,000 odd rooms coming up next year, which is a really small number given the speed of development that we had during the last 10, 15 years, I should say. I think in the long run, we shouldn't be shocked by 2026 or 2027 that we're going to need more hotel rooms, because this is the greatest city in the world. I mean, there's no question about that. Right?
Here. Yeah, great point, Vijay. And would you agree that the hotel growth that we have seen, particularly in the boroughs, has helped us grow that tourism, right?
Oh, without question. Brooklyn, yeah. I mean, look, Brooklyn's spectacular. Even Long Island City, yeah. Washington Heights now has a new radio hotel. I don't know if you guys have been there. It's a fabulous place. So the Bronx needs more hotel. There's a Marriott over there. I think it really does. And, who knows, with time, we'll have more hotels even in the Bronx.
Yeah,
Great.
The new Renaissance on 125th Street, too, in Harlem.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was there the other day. It's a beautiful hotel.
Thank you. My second question, gaming. So I read recently that there is potential for a Wynn or a Caesars coming to Hudson Yards. Any thoughts on that? I saw, this big article with the related group. Exciting, not exciting?
Great question. Who wants to take that one?
Well,
I see the winces on the face.
Well, I mean, the Gaming Commission has not issued any license, and they will not do so till next year. So, I mean, Steve Cohen's got the one on Will's Point that he thinks he's going to get it. So those of you who don't know this, there's only one license that's going to be issued for the city, Manhattan, that is, and Queens. Or probably the Bronx, I don't know. Because two of them are going to go to existing casino operators, if you will. One's in JFK and the other's at Yonkers. So the third one is the one that's up for grabs, and it's not clear who's going to get it at this point.
And I should say full disclosure. So I wasn't wincing, I was smiling. So full disclosure, my company, ICOR, proudly represents Genting. So
okay.
The existing,
Yes.
in Queens. Yeah. Okay, great. We'll come back to you. We'll hold you for the last. Yeah, on the end.
Thank you. Hi, Tiago from Madame Tussauds, New York. I have a question that's not directly specifically to any of you, but maybe for the whole panel. It's about access to Manhattan in specific and Midtown Manhattan. Obviously, we're talking about diversity and spreading the love, but our business in specific, it's on 42nd Street. We now have a congesting pricing policy that's going to take effect early next year, I guess. And we spoke a lot about the investment at the various airports, but we didn't really speak about the access to Manhattan from those airports. Is there anything you guys can share, medium term, long term, that will potentially make access into Midtown Manhattan a little bit easier for people that are traveling into the country and into the city?
Oh, absolutely. So very briefly, so I referenced it before, PATH train, extraordinary, again, unprecedented investment. For those of you who go back and forth between New York and New Jersey, actually even between Lower Manhattan, the World Trade Center footprint, which, by the way, is also back in terms of pedestrian traffic, almost to pre-2019 levels. World Trade Center 2, World Trade Center 5, Gleaming Tower, which will also have affordable housing, and also the new Perlman Performing Arts Center. But the PATH train, those investments, the cars are substantially larger. And so it will literally be able to carry, they are already able to carry more people now, significantly more people every time that there's a ride. The new bus terminal, those plans are still in formulation, but there absolutely is a commitment to that. And it will go, I think it'll be a similar transformation to what you saw at LaGuardia, being however you would describe the current bus terminal to one of the finest in the country, if not, in the world. So, and then last but certainly not least, obviously the proposed air train for LaGuardia didn't happen, but there have been lots of investments made in cooperation between the Port Authority and the MTA in terms of expedited bus routes back and forth between LaGuardia and Midtown Manhattan specifically, as well as Upper Manhattan, where I currently live. So in any given week, there's a heavy focus and a very strong partnership between the MTA in particular, the PATH, as well as the Port Authority in terms of our airports, because we want to make sure even once our passengers leave the airport property, that they can get to their destination as quickly and as efficiently and as cost effectively as possible, because that's going to play a role in whether they choose to fly to one of our 3 major airports or to Philadelphia or some other place.
That's great. And also, I believe JFK will see some upgrades to the air train.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, to air train. And, we are investing so much money. We're investing almost $800 million in traffic control on the JFK property in and of itself, outside of the new terminals.
I think we as a destination have an opportunity to drive more traffic onto the trains, especially coming from the airport. I mean, you see the international travelers doing it, right? And so it's a constant dialogue with the Port Authority about how we can improve that, how can we improve communication and messaging and signage. But it's a great point. Access into the city is going to be critical. DeWitt, I think we'll close out with you. I like your T-shirt, by the way.
So as we know, visa wait times have been pretty high, and key visa interview wait times at U.S. embassies and key markets like Colombia, India, Mexico have been high all year, about hundreds of days, some over 500 days. State Department says that's going to continue next year. So visitors from these key markets may have to wait hundreds of days to get a visa to come to the U.S. Is that a cause of concern when it comes to international inbound travel to New York? And the second question I want to ask is, relates to visas, China. Demand for visas in China is still way below pre-pandemic levels as well. Are those areas of concern in terms of international inbound travel?
I can tell you that India has come down. It's now 30 days. So
Yeah,
the way
huge
to-
improvement.
Yes.
Huge improvement in India under 30 days. Peter, what are you hearing and what's your perspective?
It's a complicated story, yes. First of all, India is a very important and growing market. The visa wait times for first-time visitors who have not submitted their biometrics, because that is the big holdup that everybody understands. This is, once you're in the system, renewals is becoming much, much easier. Waivers are being extended for people who have their biometrics. They don't have to show up in person anymore. If they have a 10-year visa, they can get it back. So the real bottleneck is the first-time visitor because of the biometrics. There are a lot of discussions going on at the State Department. DHS is having a lot of conversations about it also. What can we do with video? What can we do with remote capture, et cetera, being evaluated. No hard commitments yet on the remote capture of those biometrics. But keep in mind also, India is a very interesting market because the number of visas being issued in India nowadays are higher than they were in 2019. However, there is an enormous wait time. Why is that? There is an enormous pent-up demand or anticipatory demand of people that want to get their visas in. And so the number of visas that are being issued are very, very high. It is hard to put a finger on, are these people that are anticipating that they want to go next year and they know there's a backlog, let's put in the application now or not. But let's not confuse the fact that our wait times that applies to everybody. It is only for the first-time visitors, and of course for those numbers that get them already, that they are being served. There are indeed, if you're talking about, this is specifically for B1, B2, and that is regular business, regular tourism and business traveler. Other kind of visas are being student visas are being processed very, very quickly. The State Department has some issues on some publications on that. Now, how that pertains to China is very interesting because the capacity in China of processing visas is approximately 4 to 5 times as high as they are getting demand at this moment. At least compared to where it was before. We spoke about China. There is a pricing issue in China. There is a lot of that has to do with airfare. It is very expensive. That will change. So the expectation is that indeed China will be coming back. It's not going to be a switch. They are basically running, you can almost say, a year and a half behind on many other markets, because their restrictions over there were lifted earlier. You see also a very active encouragement from the Chinese government to spend vacation in the country. And so things will definitely improve. And the State Department is working very hard on that. But it is a challenge. Colombia, as you mentioned also, is a very high number. But on the other hand, there is the numbers of people that get visas is pretty high, but it is not going to be a solution. It's not going to be a situation that's going to be switched immediately, but it's very hard to pinpoint how far that effectively affects us today in bookings.
Yeah. And luckily we have 10-year visas, right? In most countries, right? China has 10-year, India has 10-year. So most regular travelers have those. It's people that are new into the system. And visas, as I said earlier, the State Department put out that there are more U.S. visa holders today in the world than ever before. So there is nothing but opportunity there. I want to begin to wrap up. Licia, I want to give you final thoughts on anything. I know lines at immigration halls are a question sometimes. Is that a funding issue with CBP? Anything we can do to advocate for more?
You know, it's getting better. And I say this as somebody who is probably just never really stopped traveling. So domestically and internationally. So I've experienced it myself as a consumer. Major progress is being made. It's nothing like being the focus group of one as a commissioner and, you know, sharing my own experience with the staff. So Yes, so federal resources continue to be challenged, whether it's the TSA or whether it's in terms of entry from international travel. But those process improvements are also taking place to the extent they can, given challenged resources and a stronger partnership. The last thing I wanted to say that's also going to be particularly pertinent with respect to Terminal 1, our international travel, but is already in place in Terminal 4 at JFK, and also the new terminals at LaGuardia. Really new, seamless, state-of-the-art security and check-in procedures. You're seeing that in the new terminals at Newark, at LaGuardia, at JFK, and literally Terminal 1 is going to be best in class in every respect worldwide, and that's going to be our international travel where, ground has already been broken. So really excited about the future. When you mentioned France and England, the one stat that I didn't mention, but it's consistent with your customer numbers, the 2023 short flight international, short haul international travel has now officially blown 2019 out of the water. That's folks going back and forth from Europe here and also from the Caribbean back and forth to the United States.
Love that.
So
our power as a city break destination, I think, really plays out, and we're really advantaged. I want to thank all our speakers. Please join me in thanking them. Appreciate all of your leadership. There is nothing, I think, but opportunity ahead of us as it relates to international. Remember, we have the World Cup coming in 2026. We also will be hosting the Copa, which is the Latin American soccer tournament, which we hosted a few years ago at MetLife. It will be returning in 25. And so those are just two examples of big demand generators going forward. So thank you all for your time. Happy holidays, everybody. Thanks for being here. And thanks to ABNY.